At 61 years old, standing in the kitchen of a colonial house in the northern suburbs of Chicago, Illinois, with $920,000 in accumulated retirement accounts and exactly 48 months until his planned exit from the workforce. The decision had technically already been made. The purchase agreement sat on the granite island, the black ink of his signature still slightly glossy under the recessed lighting. The transaction was substantial. The purchase price was $650,000. The down payment, wired an hour ago, was $130,000 removed directly from his non-qualified investment holdings. To the real estate agent, this was a celebration. It was a closing, a commission. To the bank, it was a secured asset with a manageable debt-to-income ratio. But in the actuarial reality of Arthur's remaining life, the mathematics were far more predatory. He had just exchanged 14% of his liquid safety net and committed $3,800 of his monthly future cash flow for a property he would occupy for 20 days a year. He was 61, he was tired, and he had just signed a 30-year obligation that would not mature until he was 91 years old. The wind howled outside, a prelude to a Midwest winter, but the house was warm. It was the warmth of a life that looked perfect on paper. The numbers in his ledger were black. The credit score was 810. But as he capped the pen and looked at his wife, who was smiling at the brochure of the lake house, a silent clock began to tick in the back of the room. It was counting down, not in dollars, but in options. Arthur was a man who had won the economic lottery of the late 20th century. He was a regional sales director for a medical supply company. For 30 years, he had climbed the ladder, rungs made of airports, rental cars, and quarterly targets. He was disciplined, he was competent. He earned $160,000 a year. By global standards, as the financial pundits often reminded people, he was in the top 1% of earners on earth. He was the definition of American prosperity. He did not gamble. He did not buy sports cars. He wore suits until the elbows shined. Then he bought new ones on sale. He had paid for 2 college tuitions. He had no consumer debt. He was the millionaire next door, or at least, he was close to it. His financial habits were built on a strategy of accumulation. He saved 15% of his gross income automatically. He believed in the market. He believed that if you did the right things, worked hard, saved steady, avoided scandal, the system would reward you with a quiet, dignified sunset. He looked at his balance sheet and saw nearly $1 million. It felt like a fortress. It felt like enough. But Arthur suffered from a specific blindness common to his generation. He confused high income with high wealth. He confused the ability to service debt with the ability to afford the asset. He felt rich because the cash flow was strong. He did not realize that cash flow is a river that dries up the day the payroll department deletes your email address. The logic that led to the lake house was not reckless. In Arthur's mind, it was prudent. It was the logic of a man who wanted to leave something behind. It is an asset, he told his brother over the phone. They aren't making any more waterfront property. It will appreciate. The internal monologue was seductive. We are not spending the money, he reasoned. We are parking it in real estate. It is diversification. He told himself the story that every buyer tells. We will rent it out during the peak season. The rental income will cover the mortgage and the taxes. It will pay for itself. He imagined the weekends, the grandchildren running on the dock, the legacy. He imagined that buying this house was the final stamp on his career, the proof that he had succeeded. I still have 4 years of peak earning, he calculated. I can rebuild the cash cushion. I'll just tighten the belt a little. It felt safe because he was prosperous. A man with his income bracket shouldn't have to worry about a second mortgage. That was a problem for other people who didn't plan. He did not view the down payment as a hole in his boat. He viewed it as an anchor that would hold him steady. He was wrong. The first constraint arrived 4 months later. It was not a disaster, it was a detail. It was a letter from the county assessor in Wisconsin. The property taxes on the lake house had been reassessed based on the sale price. They were not $6,000 a year, as the previous owner had paid. They were now $9,400, an increase of $280 a month. Arthur looked at the letter. He felt a flash of irritation, but not panic. He could handle it. He simply canceled the planned upgrade to his primary home's kitchen. We'll do the kitchen next year, he told his wife. Then came the rental reality. They listed the property for the summer months. They got bookings for July, but August was silent. The rental management company took 25% off the top. The cleaning fees were higher than expected. When the dust settled on the first season, the property had generated $4,000 in net income, but the mortgage, insurance, taxes, and utilities for the year cost $32,000. The asset was eating $28,000 of his take-home pay. That was $2,300 a month that was no longer going into his retirement investment accounts. It was $2,300 that was no longer compounding. He stopped his automatic savings transfer for just a few months to cover the shortfall. This was the constraint. It was the loss of the forward momentum. The river of savings had stopped flowing into the reservoir. Instead, it was being diverted to irrigate a lawn 2 hours away that he wasn't even walking on. The damage of a financial misstep is rarely the initial cost. The damage is what the money would have done if left alone. Year 2 brought the inflation spike. The cost of heating the lake house through the freezing Wisconsin winter doubled. The insurance premiums on waterfront property in the region jumped 30% due to changing climate risk models. At work, the atmosphere shifted. The company missed its Q3 targets. There were whispers of restructuring. Arthur was 62 now. He was expensive. He looked around the conference room and realized he was the oldest person there by 10 years. The fear began to set in. He needed to save. He knew he needed to save. But every spare dollar was being sucked into the vacuum of the second property. He needed to replace the roof on the lake house, another $12,000. He had to take it from his cash emergency fund, leaving him with less than 3 months of living expenses. The stress became physical. He developed high blood pressure. He wasn't sleeping. He would lie in bed at 2 a.m., doing math on the ceiling. If I lose my job tomorrow, how long can we last? The answer was 90 days. Despite a net worth on paper of over $1 million, including the equity in the 2 homes, he was cash poor. He was illiquid. He was trapped in the prosperous life. He couldn't sell the lake house so soon without taking a loss on the closing costs and the realtor fees. He couldn't sell his primary home because his wife loved it. He was earning $160,000 a year, and he was living paycheck to paycheck to support a building that sat empty on a Tuesday. The realization did not come with a bang. It came with a whisper at a dinner party. It was at a friend's house. The host, a man named David, was retiring. David had earned half of what Arthur earned. David drove a Honda. David lived in a townhouse, but David was glowing. He was talking about his plans. He was moving to a smaller place near his daughter. He was done. Arthur asked him quietly, by the bar, "How are you making the numbers work, Dave?" David smiled and said, "I have no payments, Art. I haven't had a payment in 15 years. I don't need much to live, so I don't need much to leave." Arthur looked at the drink in his hand. He realized, with a sudden, nauseating clarity, that he was the poorest man in the room. He had the highest income. He had the biggest houses. But he had zero freedom. He realized that the lake house was not a legacy. It was a prison. It demanded to be fed. It demanded his labor. He could not retire at 65. He could not retire at 67. As long as he held the debt and the operating costs of that property, he had to keep working. He had traded his time for prestige. He had traded his exit for a view of the water. Arthur's story is the story of the modern middle to upper class trap. We live in an era where prosperity is defined by what we consume, not what we control. For the generation currently approaching retirement, the danger is not always a lack of income. It is the inability to say no to the expectations of that income. We are told that if you earn a certain amount, you should own certain things. You should have the vacation home. You should help the adult children. You should upgrade the lifestyle. But inflation does not care about what you deserve. The market does not care about your past hard work. When a 60-year-old takes on a 30-year obligation, they are making a bet against their own biology. They are betting that their health, their industry, and their energy will remain static. But entropy is the only guarantee. Things break, bodies tire, industries change. The tragedy is that many people reach the finish line with a net worth that looks impressive on a spreadsheet, but is completely useless for generating a safe, sustainable life. They are asset-rich and freedom-poor. They are the working wealthy, chained to the oar of their own success. Consider the version of the story where Arthur put the pen down. In that timeline, he looks at the brochure and says, "It's beautiful, but it's an anchor." He keeps the $130,000 in his investment account. When the market corrects, he buys more shares at a discount. When the inflation spike hits, he barely notices, because his overhead is low. He continues to save 20% of his income. At age 65, he walks into his boss's office and hands in his resignation. He is not afraid. He does not care about the restructuring. He rents a cabin on the lake for 2 weeks in July. It costs him $4,000. He enjoys the view. He watches his grandkids play. And when the 2 weeks are over, he hands the keys back to the owner. He hands the property taxes, the insurance, the roof leaks, and the stress back to the landlord. He drives home to his paid-off house, a free man. He missed out on owning the view, but he gained ownership of the rest of his life. We spend our lives trying to accumulate. We fill our attics, our garages, and our balance sheets. But in the final accounting, the only currency that has any value is time. Wealth is not the number of keys on your keyring. Wealth is the ability to wake up in the morning and ask, "What do I want to do today?" rather than "What must I do today?" Arthur is still working. He drives to the office in the dark. He drives home in the dark. The lake house is empty right now. The heat set to 50 degrees to keep the pipes from freezing. It is waiting for him, but he cannot go to it because he has to work to pay for it. He looks at the calendar on his desk. The date of his retirement has moved. It is blurry now. The question hangs over the perfectly manicured lawn of a house he can't afford to leave. What is the point of winning the world if you lose your freedom to enjoy it? And how much of your remaining time are you willing to sell to buy a life that others expect you to have?